And so this week we have to talk about the elephant in the room. Recently, if you've played MTG Arena, you might have seen the rise of this deck. And this is not the exact same deck because playing that one is just wrong. Like, have you ever done something and you knew what you were doing is wrong? And that's how it feels like. This deck wins. Oh, it definitely wins. Like, I would say with the proper deck, I was only using to the red aggro, the mono red aggro. Now, what is this deck? This deck is a standard combo, but unlike the standard combo with some, interesting twists and turns, well, like Croc Clan Ironworks, this one is a little bit extra annoying because this is like playing against blue, but on steroids. And here is how it works. See, this Nexus Bant deck, it's a combo deck, and just like any combo deck, it's got a few engines, a few things to stall while you're pulling your pieces. Now, we're gonna see what happens and how it is executed. Now, combo decks, they can be very entertaining. I played against one in the previous rotation. It was pretty interesting, it's a lot of fun. It wasn't annoying at all. But this one, it relies on an infinite combo that has you take almost infinite amount of turns. In fact, if you pulled it off right, you will be taking infinite amount of turns. Its main win condition is Teferiing -3. It's a legit win condition, I'll give you that much. But come on, whoever has designed this card was obviously doing it malicious. Nobody can make this kind of card without, obvious malicious intent. With Nexus of Fate, I mean, it shuffles back into your deck. It's obviously made to be infinite so that you will not mill yourself to death. So, and now with the addition of Wilderness Reclamation, which untaps all of your lands at the end of your turn, allowing you to cast basically all of your instants. Now, what it also does is that you can tap your lands, trigger Wilderness Reclamation, and tap it double. Since Nexus of Fate requires 8 mana, well, all you technically need to use a Nexus of Fate is 4 lands, which makes it a lot easier to use. Now here you see me playing it against a mono... I mean, it's like an aggro deck. This is a best of 1. So I activate Chemist's Insight to pull a bit more lands. And the most annoying part about this and why is this deck is like playing... against blue extra. And by that I mean is this. Against blue, you expect counterspells. Counterspells are annoying. I'll give you that. As a blue player myself, I'll tell you that much. They're annoying. They're a lot of fun to pull off, but you can play around it. They're part of the game, and they're like actually fun to deal with. If, you're kind of experienced with dealing with them. So with the addition of these cards such as Hydroid Krasis, which can stall the game long enough for you to pull off your combo, because it draws you cards, it creates a body that with enough mana you're able to create a pretty decent one, and draw cards, heal. I mean, come on, this is basically like, just screams value. So, the other problem is the Root Snare, the Fog. The previous version of this was called the Turbo Fog, and it was because the Fog cards prevent all combat damage during that turn. Now if you've got multiple of those, you don't even need any creatures. All you're doing is stalling long enough that you will have all of your combo pieces in hand or on the field. So let's take a look how it progresses. So my opponent has got the Hero of Precinct 1, Tithe Taker, Hunted Witness. Now, Tithe Taker is one of those cards that I actually misread during the spoilers before the release. I thought it would increase the cost of spells at any given time. Ooh, Gutter Bones. This is basically sort of better/worse reassembling a skeleton. Why is that thing even rare? That makes no sense. Conclave Tribunal is completely wasted on this one, on Hydroid Krasis. It's a 4/4. I mean, I can see if that's your only option, go for it, but come on. Now, you might see that I'm using full control. The reason for that is simple. If you're not using full control, the Wilderness Reclamation is simply gonna skip your turn and basically be useless. And my opponent very much surprises me by Conclave Tribunaling the Wilderness Reclamation. Smart move, but I'm not that sure about it. I mean, he probably realized by this point that I have playing Bant Nexus. So let's play that mana cost to bring the Teferi in. Now Teferi, it's a really strong card. I wouldn't say it's, you know, overpowered or anything. I mean, it's definitely strong. You know, it's kind of like the cornerstone of the standard control decks for a good reason. For a good reason. If you know how to use him, he's great. Like, there are a lot of intricacies when it comes to Teferi because he's a 5 cost and he's able to draw you cards and untap two of your lands. He's pretty effective. With that being said, what makes this deck extra cancerous, you might have heard the news that one player had banned for looping Nexus of Fate for 2 hours straight against the Magic World Champion. I think he's still the champion. I just can't pronounce his name, so I'm not even gonna try it. Going back to the analysis here. Interesting. Going back to the analysis, this deck is just employs so many ways of just speeding things up and just blocking that damage. The fog is really frustrating for the opponent. The fact that the player takes infinite amount of turns. It's just unfun for anybody involved, and the Nexus of Fate's design is obviously horrible. I mean, I think its release was also a controversial thing because at the time it was only available through an event. Those who are familiar with the Magic's history, there was a similar card to that back in the day that had to be later released in the Duelist magazine. With the Duelist magazine, obviously Roots there. My opponent was obviously expecting that. He's experienced against this deck. Now, against most decks, knowing what to expect can give you a tremendous advantage. But against a deck like this, no, it's just your draws, and when things are moving like this, nothing is going to help. So let's see what else happens. One of the other puzzle pieces is the search for Azcanta. Now I'm starting to use the Nexus of Fate because I'm trying to get my Teferi to 8. When Teferi gets to 8, well, he ults, and at that point, game is basically over. I have seen only once that when Teferi used his ultimate, the game finally turned. Now, let's see what makes this deck ever so cancerous. It untaps 2 lands, and because of the Wilderness Reclamation, the turns take very, very long. And of course, the main thing that you're using here is your opponent's patience. The goal here is not even to have not even win with your standard win condition. It's just to drag it long enough that your opponent will just give up, or you will ultimate your Teferi, as we're gonna see in this scenario, and you will exile all of his cards. He will realize he cannot do anything, and you can just swing at him with a 1/1 just for the humiliation. Or you can just mill him to death while you can put your Teferi back into your deck, keep drawing him, and then rinse and repeat. Now we have the second Nexus of Fate going down. Draw a card, Teferi +1. Now, I splashed in Knight of Autumn. As I said, this is not the full deck. This is deliberately so that we don't spread the information, because this deck is not really fun to play. I mean, for starters, I will admit, I played for a little bit, and it was a little fun, but after a while, it's just so tedious. It takes so long, but it's so consistent. If you're doing it right, yes, you will be winning considerable amount of times, if not 100% of the time. Now, let's see, we're using the Knight of Autumn to take out the Conclave Tribunal. Wilderness Reclamation comes back. Because we already have a turn coming, the flyer swings. And our turn, Nexus of Fate gives us another one. Oh, now Wilderness Reclamation basically gives us an extra turn. because when your lands are untapped and when almost all of your spells are instant, you're gonna basically get an extra turn. Now, is that really overpowered? I don't feel like it is, unless it's in a deck like this that solely relies on these things. And now we trigger the Nexus of Fate. Now, was that the best move? I do not know. Actually, no, this was a misplay on my part because I should have activated a draw and have had put down a Scanta so that I would be able to keep pulling back Nexus of Fate. That's why Search for a Scanta is one of the combo pieces in this case, so that you can keep pulling Nexus of Fate with every turn that you take. Well, almost every turn, because you look at the top 4. But statistically, at that point, with so many ramp cards, you will have most of your deck drained at that point. So statistically, pretty difficult to miss. So let's see, Search for a Scanta goes down. Teferi goes to 8.
Keep up the pace.
Glacial Fortress. For health. Now, we could have ended it with that, you know, with the next turn, just swing and end. But, let's say you do not have a Hydroid Krasis on the field. Well, what do? Let's take a look. You can, the main win condition here is the sadistic way of just draining your opponent's patience. I mean, sure, you could concede, but the fact that with the proper draws, there is no way for this deck to lose, especially when it's built the right way, with enough amount of fogs. It's difficult. I'm not saying it's unbeatable, and especially in best of 3, this deck is... I mean, it's not very weak. It is in the meta. If you have Unmoored Ego, it's basically game over for this deck. You can just Unmoored Ego the Nexus of Fate, and you lost the main set piece. Got another Chemisters inside. Just to show you how degenerate this thing can get. Now, with the Wilderness Reclamation being as it is, you're able to activate your Ascanta and Arch of Oraska an extra time, allowing you to draw even more cards. We activate Nexus of Fate to make sure we are not out of the loop. And you know when you're running out of Nexus of Fates is when you have failed in executing this one. Transform Ascanta. Alting Teferi. Now at this point, most people would quit. Not this guy, though.
I'm known for my excellent timing.
Now, let's see. At this point, I'm just debating if we should end it now, or should we just keep the degeneracy going. I was just curious how long I could take it. Apparently, to infinity and beyond.
Let's skip to the good part.
Now, as you can see, since right now I am out of Nexus of Fate. Now, there is one more way that this deck can fall apart, which is counterspells. If you can fit in a bunch of counterspells into your into your swings, you will be able to do quite a bit of damage. But decks that are both creature heavy enough to pose a serious threat and run counter spells on best of one, I'm afraid that is not really a thing. So now you see me that I have ran out of Nexus Fate. More land. With the Wilderness Reclamation. Now, the more Wilderness Reclamations you have, you will be able to draw even more cards using your Ascanta and Arch of Araska. So, now if you have the combo in action. Now, by this point, my opponent only had 3 lands. And on the other hand, the Bant Nexus over here has got 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 16 lands. My opponent finally gets a turn, and that shows that I have failed in pulling the infinite combo. Now, naturally, at this point, it's just... This is just horrible to watch. Let's get a 16-16. Oh, or is it 15-15? I must have miscounted my lands. A 15-15 Hydroid Krasis. That's a 1 token that is gonna get exiled. At this point, I'm just sad. And just realized I'm wasting my own time. And yeah, this was the degeneracy of the Bant Nexus.